On behalf of our team at RDIEC, we are privileged and honored to welcome Mr. Michael Lonechild. Mr. Lonechild is here to discuss the wonderful types of artwork that he has done and world renowned and famous for. Before Mr. Lonechild takes her away, I would like to remind students before we begin that after you watch this presentation, please complete the survey found on our website either by using the QR code or go to the www.rdiec.ca. By completing the survey, you're automatically entered to win a $50 gift card, which will be drawn at the end of every month. It's our honor, Mr. Lonechild. Take her away. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be invited to come and talk about something that I've been doing all my life, and that I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to talk about my art. So my name is Michael Lonechild. I'm the White Bear Reservation. It's 6 miles north of Carlisle. And I grew up here all my life. I've been here, and I started my art when I was around 15. I started to take it a little serious, I guess. The first artist I ever seen to actually do anything with a pencil was my father. My father is a very good sketcher, especially when it came to doing this one particular sketch. He always did this horseback rider. I think it was a picture of a rider that was put on the Remington cartridge box. Either that or it's a different one, but that was the picture. It was a Pony Express rider with his hat turned back, and he would always sketch that, and he would always do a really good job of it. And then when I went to school, I started to draw the same thing. You know, I caught on to it pretty good, and I think after a while I did a better Pony Express rider than my father did, and that was the beginning of my art, I guess. But I always remember that it was always in me to become an artist. I can't really describe why I became an artist. I guess it's like anything that we develop through our growth, is that I believe that art is a God-given talent, and that God chose me to be an artist, and that He put that drive inside of me to keep going. And I think that's why I became an artist, became a painter. And a lot of the stuff that I learned in my childhood, I learned it on my own. I had to learn how to mix color. I had to learn how to sketch. I had to learn how to compose. And a lot of this, back then, we didn't have internet like we do today. Anything you want today, you just find it on the internet. But back then we had to use books. We had to use visual stuff like that. We had to go out and look at stuff. And that's how I learned. I learned by trial and error in my art. I guess that would be the best way to describe it. And I didn't become an artist overnight. I didn't become a good painter overnight. It like I said, I had the drive and it always fascinated me that people could actually do something like that. And in the beginning, I was never really satisfied with my sketching or my technique with my art. But even today, I'm still learning how to be an artist. Although I'm 65 years old, I'm still learning to be an artist. It's a lifelong learning process, I guess. Okay, you could switch it. I guess after I got a little older, by around 18, 19 years old, I started to really get the hang of painting. Although the color scheme was still a problem for me, because I only used a very limited color. I didn't understand the color wheel, or I didn't understand the proper way to mix, and that I experimented with a lot of different medium. Like I tried watercolor. Watercolor to me was too definite. You know, you have to know what you're doing before you put it on. Otherwise, if you forgot something, it was too late. And it was too fragile. Like you get a little bit of water on your paper and it's ruined. So I used it for a while because that's all I could afford. And later, I started experimenting with oil paint. And when I was in school, I started to paint with oil. And oil paint is a really good medium, except for the slow drying of it. It dried too slow for me. And the one that really gave me the most problem is that I remember is white. The white, it's called zinc white. It was a good color, but it took weeks for it to dry. So it was a tough waiting to try and let it dry. But one day I was in school and the teacher pulled out this new paint. It was a plastic-based paint, and it moved and felt like oils. The only thing it didn't have was the smell or the cleaning that involved in oils. You had to clean it with turpentine. It took a long time, but acrylics was very handy. It was easy to clean up, and it dried fast. And the technique that I developed with my oils was quite a thick. I really enjoyed putting it on thick. So when I switched over to acrylics, I kept using that technique. I kept using I handled it like oils, and it was a fantastic paint, and I've been using it since. I painted a lot of paintings with acrylics, and back in the 70s when I started painting with it, and today I see some of my old paintings and they're still as brilliant as they were when I painted them. So the painting is excellent. And yeah, that's how I became the painter with acrylics. And as I progressed with my technique, I began to understand these colors. First of all, I started painting with for those of you who paint, I started to paint with burnt sienna, white, and maybe a little bit of blue. And that's all I used. It was kind of like a black and white paintings was kind of what I painted in the beginning, because I didn't know how to really handle the paint yet. But as I progressed, I began to understand there's the yellow, red, and blue are three primary colors. And I began to work with them and experiment with them. And I realized early on that there's only three colors. All the other colors come from there. And I began to develop this wheel in my head that I could take these paints and manipulate them and find a color. I didn't know how I did it. I just did it. And if I wanted it darker, I would use a purple or I would use the black. And if I wanted to lighten it up more, I would use the white. So there was, I began to understand that black and white were just tints. That the three colors were the ones that produced all the other different shades of color. And for a long time, I only believed that you could only mix two of them. But later on, I found out that you could mix all three of them and develop a color. And it's just a matter of manipulating how much paint you use to achieve a certain thing. So that part developed in my mind. I learned how to paint in my mind and to achieve these colors. And I became quite prolific at it. I found out later on that that when I did do some studying on the color wheel, that I wasn't far off. That's how these colors are developed. All these millions of colors you get when you buy, for example, a box of crayons, you get all these bunch of different colors. They all come from the three colors, right? And that's how it's developed. And that's how I understand it today. And there's a lot of things about art, about painting that I learned along the way. Like I just didn't sit down and start painting. I had this canvas that I put in front of me, and it was blank. Now, what am I going to do with it? You know, what do I want to paint? And how do you establish something that's going to look appealing? So right there again, I had a block. How do I start this painting? And I would sketch something on my canvas, and I would begin to paint the sky, and I would begin to paint the background and then the foreground, and pretty soon I had a scene. And then now it looked great, but to me it needed something. It needed life in it. So I started to paint people, horses. I started painting anything that was alive. I painted deer, elk, moose, you name it, I painted. And that brought the painting to life, and it created a story. And that's what I like to do. I like to tell a story in my paintings. I like to I start off with a blank canvas, and I learned some simple things in art that helped me today. Is that I never change the colors that I'm using. First of all, for example, there's blue, red, and yellow, right? I'm telling you about that. these colors, for example, blue comes in many different tints that the factories make. Some of them are really brilliant, and some of them are really dark. And the same with red and yellow. They come with different characteristics. The colors are either brighter or darker. So especially with blue, especially if you're going to paint the sky, you would have to keep painting using that blue all throughout your canvas. Otherwise, you run into difficulties. It doesn't look finished. I've done a few paintings like that where I mistakenly used a different blue, and that in my eyes, like art is a visual thing that we learn through looking at something, whether it's done or not. You know, I guess the best explanation would be a man with a bad suit, for example. As soon as you look at him, you know something's wrong, right? Well, the same thing with art. When you look at a painting, there's something wrong with it, or you look at it and it's really appealing. That's because all the colors are balanced. And when I start talking about art, I get carried away. I talk about anything that I do in my art. I try to explain it, but I get so involved in trying to explain it that I lose what I'm trying to say. So you gotta forgive me for that, because I get so excited about my art, I guess. But getting back to my technique, I find that by constantly layering my paintings, I achieve a really brilliant color, because that's the way acrylics dries. Acrylics dries, you start painting, and when it's wet, it's really brilliant. But as it dries, it starts to lose it starts to dull a little bit. So you got to keep adding more paint onto it. And that's how I paint my pictures. I guess the learning part of art is still continuing. I still have to learn a lot of things yet. Like I said, I'm 65, and I feel like I'm not quite there yet. I still have a lot to do where I could make my paintings better. And at the beginning, like I said, when I was 15, that's the drive that made me become an artist, was that I was never satisfied with my paintings. That I could make them better, you know. And that when I look at my work in the past, I see what I feel like just taking it and bringing it on my easel and touching it up and fixing it up. That's because I've developed a little bit, and that I think all artists are like that. You know, they look at the paintings that are older paintings, and they say, yeah, I could have did this, or could have done that. And yeah, that's the beautiful thing about art. It's that if you keep evolving, if you keep creating, that it does set people off. You know, not everybody's an artist. The good ones could mesmerize you could stop you in your tracks when you're walking by a painting and stop and say, what, why is this painting so beautiful? What's in there that looks so good? So that's what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to stop people in their tracks with my paintings. Okay, could we switch? I guess I could talk a little bit more about how I evolved as an established artist, I guess you would want to call it. I started art shows when I was around 18 years old. On my reserve here, the White Bear First Nation, there was a priest back in the 70s that had a parish here, and that he was quite an art lover himself. He collected art. He had some really good art, and I think that's how we made a connection, because he knew I was an artist, and that he seen something in my art because of his expertise, I guess I'll call it. And he became interested in my art, and he started to buy my art. Back then, when I was painting, I was just painting because I liked painting. But he'd come over and he'd buy a painting or two off me, and pretty soon he had too many paintings he couldn't buy anymore. He was his name was Father Joe Soroviak. He passed away many years ago. But I look back at it now, he was my first agent, I guess, my first manager. Of the things that he helped me to achieve was he started the ball rolling, I guess, in what I was doing. He set up an art show for me in Estevan. That's where I first had my art show, was in Estevan, in the town hall. I think we had about 28 paintings, and we came home with maybe 3 or 4. So it was a pretty successful show. And then he started to buy more paintings off me. And then we went to Weyburn. And the same thing happened there. We sold all of them, and well, most of them midway. And that the thing about my friend Father Joe is that he never kept any of the money that he made on top. He gave it to me, although he already paid me for the money, for the painting, I should say. But I think he wanted me to succeed in this, what I was doing. So the ball was rolling pretty good. We ended up in Regina a few times, and we did pretty good sales there. And eventually we ended up in Calgary. Calgary was a mecca for art in the 80s. I didn't have to go any place. We had numerous art shows there every year. And that the oil business was booming. The oil prices were up, and everything was good. I made a lot of money, and I found a new manager, Father Joe. Wanted me to be more I don't know how to say it, more successful, I guess. And he found me this manager who owned the gallery in downtown Calgary. So I stuck with these people for a long time. And we did a lot of business. And that's kind of how my career went in the art. I got a break in Calgary, and it kind of set off, it opened the doors for many places. Like I had art shows in Toronto, I had art shows in Denver, Colorado, and I even had an art show in an oil company in Washington, D.C. they flew me there with all my art. It was quite an experience to just to be in that city. And yeah, that's how my art career was. I also there was many articles written about my art in different magazines. I guess one of them was with Dr. John Anson Warner's book, The Life and Art of North American Indian. He wrote an article in there about my paintings, and things were happening for my art. People recognized me as a good painter, I guess. And I guess I owe a lot of my my art career to my friend Father Joe. Yeah, maybe you could switch it now to some pictures. I have some paintings here on that I wanted to show you, and I kind of explained some of them to you. So some of them that I painted recently. These aren't that old. These would be painted in the last 6-7 years. The first one's called Nook. I'm going to see the new baby. The painting is on the reserve here many years ago, and the old people would get all excited when there was a new member or a new baby born. They would get all dressed up and cook some food and take it over to the family, and they would share the food with them, and they would visit for a long time. And back then, you know, the distractions we have today weren't there. For example, we didn't have no TV, we didn't have no internet, we didn't have no cell phones, you know. So we had a lot of visiting, a lot of good company, and the old people would practice their language, and that they would share stories on what they were going to do, and that they would come up. Sometimes they would call an elder to come over, and the elder would give the baby an Indian name. That an Indian name would stick with the kid for the rest of his life. And the story I heard about the Indian name was that if you got a Cree name or any other tribal name, that when you went to the afterlife, that's how you were going to be known as. They call you by your name, and you would be there. So my Indian name is Kiskalpi Simkiusnes. It's a Soto name, a Nakkoe name. It means simply morning child, I guess. My grandfather was a Nakkoe, a Soto person, and my Nokum was Nakota, Assiniboine. And on our reservation here, we have four tribes that live here. There's the Nakota, the Cree, and Nakaway, and Sioux. So we're pretty mixed up in the tribes here, and that. But the good thing about it was that my Nook was quite a knew a lot of different languages. She was a Nakota, of course. She spoke Nakota, and that she also spoke fluent Cree. And it's really funny because she was the one who taught me how to speak Cree. Her and my mom. And on my mom's side, they were all Cree people. So that's how I became to speak Cree. I got Nakota and Soto blood in me from my father. And so that's how we tell stories of the things in the past. And if you look at my painting, I'm telling you another story in the background. There's a story about the guys that are hunting buffalo in the back. Not too long ago, I know my mushrooms, my grandfathers, his grandfathers probably did that. And it adds a uniqueness to the painting because of the ability to tell two stories in one. So that's how I paint these. And I'll tell you a little story about how I became to paint these. I didn't always paint these second images into my paintings. A long time ago in the 80s, I started doing that. There's a gentleman from Wawuda, which is not too far from here. I don't think he was from Wawuda, but his wife was from Wawuda. His name was Paul Baxter. He was an assistant coach for the Calgary Flames. He came to visit me one time and he said, he wanted to buy a painting off me. But he said, I just don't want an ordinary painting. I know you do good work, but I want something special. I want you to paint me a spiritual painting. And he went on to explain that that he had an awakening, I also call it. The Creator touches us and we wake up and we realize who we are. And it happened to him, I guess. So I painted him this painting. It was an old man was dying, an old Indian was dying. And a long time ago, my people used to bury their dead on tripods. They put them up there. And in the bottom, this old man was dying, and it was in winter time, and the snow was blowing. And in the imagery, I painted this rider coming, was right up to him. And this man's spirit was coming out of his body and he was reaching out and the rider was picking him up. And that's how I started to paint these things. And it gave me an inspiration to even take it a little further. You know, I could tell stories now, 2 stories, not just one. And the second story, it didn't matter what size it was. It didn't matter that it had to fit evenly with like the horses would have to be the same size or the people would have to be the same size. That they could be huge. Like in some of the paintings that I did with the imagery, they're huge. They're wolves running in the sky. There's hunters. There's I even drew some eagles flying, and Yeah, faces in the sky, like old men faces in the sky or in the background. I helped, I didn't help, I helped, I was part of uh, I was part of a book. A gentleman, his name is Weeb. Weeb, he's a very famous author. Comes from around Edmonton. Uh, the publisher that he was writing the book for phoned me up one day and asked me if I wanted to illustrate some pictures for him for the book. And of course, I said, yeah, and we did it. It was called The White Buffalo, I think it was called. A Lost Buffalo, something like that. I'm getting too old and my memory's going. But it was, and there in some of the paintings that I'd done, I did the illusions, the imagery right on the teepee inside. Like you could see the buffalo and the spirits and the old man was praying. So there's a lot of, it helps to create a different insight on the paintings. And this particular painting here, something to do with, my eyes are getting bad, I can't read. Anyways, it's a hockey scene. It's what we used to do when we were kids. It was a good day. It was a really good day. It was sunny and the kids were out and more kids coming. And but the secondary story is the trees in the background. There's a big buffalo hunt going on in the background. So my landscapes on my reserve here, things happened in these landscapes many years ago. So that's what I try to depict, that, you know, back then they were busy chasing, looking for food. And yeah, that's how I tried to paint my pictures. And this one, Lone Thunder Getting Home. Okay. We have a mountain on our reserve, not a mountain, a hill, a large hill. We always call it the mountain. It's called Heart Hill. It's a very sacred hill. And a lot of my people that fast go up there and sit for 3-4 days sometimes. That we respect it. We try not to abuse. We try not to do anything crazy up there. So I was painting it. I wanted to paint something really spiritual in it, and it was the buffalo was what seemed to be the ones that had the strong spirit. So I painted a bunch of them in there. And this one here is called Eagle One. Now that's an interesting one again. There's a gentleman that lives in Manor. His name is Derek Beguel. He started this company many years ago, and he built these rigs. He built them from scratch right outside his yard. And I was wondering what the heck is Derek building? big things were sitting outside his yard, and he was building these rigs. And when he finished, he started to drill, and he kept building them. Pretty soon he had a bunch of them. He's quite a successful man. One day he came over and he asked me to paint him a painting about his rigs. So this is how I came up. I went over to one of his rigs out in the field, and I took a bunch of photographs, and I worked from the photographs. But I had to put a meaning to it. And the meaning I put behind it was these eagles and buffalo running fast. I called it, what the heck did I call it? Something about the screeching sounds and the rumbling sounds of Eagle One. So the meaning really fit. Yeah, it was quite large. And this one is a new day, a new beginning. This painting belongs to our lawyer on the reserve here. He bought this off me. His name is Jeff Hall. He's a good friend of mine. He's a client of mine. He buys paintings off me. He wanted me to paint him something that had a meaning of every 2 years we have an election on our reserve. We select a chief and 4 and 6 councillors. So he wanted me to paint this painting because of our new chief. And this is what I came up with. I used the colts, and I used the baby buffalo in the image. And in the bottom, if you look at the bottom there, if the reflection shows these women with their children. And again, I used ultramarine blue and a little bit of a different blue. I combined them together to achieve that color. And this one is called JR's Dream. That's a good painting. It's really hard to understand if I don't explain it to you. The dream JR had. JR is a young man who travels a spiritual road. He has many songs. He does a lot of cultural stuff that he doesn't have to do, but he wants to do it because he's a young man. He travels a good road, I guess. One day he came to me and he said, paint me a painting of my dream. So he explained the dream to me. His dream was north of Arcola, if you look into the hills. He said his dream was they were camped there somewhere. And he looked out towards the hills, and he could see this movement in the fields. And it was swaying like back and forth, and it was getting closer and closer, and dust was starting to form. And as it got closer, he dreamt in his dream, he could see all these buffalo coming towards him. And all these buffalo came and stopped in front of him. And out of the buffalo herd, the dust was still settling, and out of that dust, the buffalo, these 4 old men came out. And they came up, approached him, talking a language, probably Nakota, but it was kind of an ancient language that he couldn't make out the words to it. And these old men sat down in front of him, and one of them made a gesture that he was going like that. He wanted to smoke the pipe. And Judy was looking for his pipe, scrambling around, trying to find his pipe. And he never found his pipe. By the time he turned around and checked on these old men, they were gone. They went back. They were gone. So that's how I painted this painting. There were these old men. One was coming from the background there. You could see him coming. Yeah, and this particular painting here is a recent painting. I think I know last couple of months. I think I did this one. I was out driving around, coming home from fishing or something. I happened to look into one of the sloughs in the park, and I seen this scene, and that's the way I paint a lot of my paintings. I see things that I can't get out of my mind until I paint them. So when I got home, I sketched it out really quick, and next day I started to paint it, and I started to put. I didn't want my characters to be too overwhelming from the scene, so I left them in the shadow. I was more concerned with that brilliant sunlight that was hitting the trees. And again, in the trees, I put some buffalo, and in the foreground, I did the same thing. I paint a lot of buffalo because they're a very sacred animal. And that's how I came about to paint this painting. Okay. This one is a really interesting painting. It's, like I said, it's real imagery, I guess you would say. It's kind of a folklore story. The Indian sneaking up resembles a wolf. He has the wolf headdress on, and his ability to move quietly, his ability to hunt, and he's so good at it that in this picture is that he unfolds the wolves, and that's what I was trying to say, that he was such a great hunter, he moved like the wolf, he was cunning, that the wolves kind of moved with him. That's what I wanted to paint in this. That's what I wanted to say in this painting. Okay. And then this painting is a gentleman from north of Arcola there. His name is Grant. I think his last name is Grant. But he bought a lot of my art through the gallery in Esteban. That he admires the elk. And him too, he told me a story. He said he was out hunting one day, and he came upon this slough, and the mist was the mist from the slough was still coming up because of what happens early in the morning when the fog comes out of it. And in the fog, he figured that would it be nice if I could see an elk coming through the fog? And I went a step further. I drew two bulls fighting in the fog. And in the background, I put some cows, some female elk standing in the fog. So that's how I do my paintings. I get an idea, and then I just keep adding on to it. And this particular one is, again, it's a scene of a certain place. It's called Sammy's Hill. It's a hill just down the road from my house here. The main road runs right by it. And a long time ago, these people lived right along that hill. And when I was done, I wanted to emphasize more on the hill. So I put a hunting scene again into the hill. And if you look closely, you'll see the hunt happening in the bushes. And I even painted some rain in the snow on the hills. So I guess in this painting here, it's kind of a nostalgic painting for me. It's an old man, a wise old Indian who's kind of like a medicine man, I guess. He's a holy man. He sees, while they were out traveling, he sees a vision in the storm. And the vision he sees is a derrick drilling for oil. And some oil wells in the foreground there. And it has a good message, because it, and if you reverse that painting, which one day I'll do, I'll reverse it. Like I did do it in an Eagle One painting. I put the present in the front and I put the buffalo in the back. So I paint the ideas that come into my mind, I guess. Some of them are never turn out. Okay, so could we take a break?
Just wondering if you could maybe ask a couple of questions and then we could maybe just wind this down. Your paintings are absolutely spectacular, and I had a chance to look at them last night when I was, putting this presentation together, and I didn't really look at them. And I think your explanation of that secondary painting is so incredible, and just your explanation of how it came to be and how you're intertwining the past with the present. I really appreciated that. So thank you so much for those explanations, and just your journey too, and how you've gone through the training in your own personal pathway of becoming such an incredible artist.
Thank you.
Mr. Lonechild, I'd just like to say that you truly are a gift from the Creator. Your artwork, your knowledge, your ancestry, it is just so refreshing, and it leaves a person without words, just how beautiful it is. And I just want to thank you on behalf of our RDIEC team for what you've done for the students of Saskatchewan, the students of Canada, and for culture across the world. Thank you so much for your gift, sir.
Thank you. You're welcome. It was an honor.
About taking their art to the next level to make their living as an artist?
I guess first of all, I want to say that like in everything in life, that we got to put effort into it, and that we got to keep maintaining what we already know. And in order to get better with that knowledge, that we got to go again and get some more knowledge. So it's a never-ending learning experience with art. I don't think it's just in art. I think it's in everything that we do in our lives. That life is like art. We got to keep evolving, and that for young people especially, that I read a quote one time. I don't know if I'm going to say it right, but I read an article in an art magazine once. It said that all art. Picasso said, "All children are artists. The trick is to keep them that way until they grow up," which is really true. You know, if there's a kid interested in anything like music or art or singing, you know, we got to keep them at it. You know, we got to keep them interested at it. And I don't think I would have ever become an artist if somebody told me, "Look, get in your room and practice your art." You know, it was something that to me today it's still a hobby, and I enjoy it. I was very fortunate to make a little bit of money at it, and that I would have been a painter today even if I never sold anything. You know, it was a love of what was given to me by the Creator that I'm fortunate, one of the fortunate people on my reserve, that I became an artist, and that I guess in today's world, we're going into the 21st century, or we're already in it, that we must keep our kids learning, that education is very important, that I never thought like this for a long time until I became a part of an organization out of Fort Capel, Treaty 4 Education Alliance. Helped me to look at teachers in a different way, that they're very special people, that not everybody could be a teacher that I've seen. They allowed me to work in schools with children. My first year, I worked in 17 schools in Treaty 4 territory, and I watched, I observed what it takes to be a teacher. So when I was done, I had a different attitude towards teachers. I envy them. I adore them because they stick to it. You know, I don't think I could ever be a teacher, but the way I show people stuff is I show them. I actually sit down and I paint a picture, and that's the way I learned. I watched people. I watched books. I watched my dad draw. I watched other people draw, and the main thing is to keep learning. And for all students, and especially my people, is that you know, we have a lot of difficulties in the world. We have a lot of difficulties at home, but that doesn't make an excuse to stop learning. So that's my message to kids, is that there is no excuse to stop learning. Thank you.
Drawings would you do in order to get to the final stage that you would be happy enough with, I guess?
Like I said, painting is not my problem anymore. It's developing an idea in my mind, like in my head. Like I do very limited drawing. I don't spend hours sketching or anything. I have this, I guess we go back. I learned all that stuff already. I know how to do it. I know how to apply it on my canvas. I don't have to keep dragging it with me. But there are some basic techniques I use when I'm composing a picture. First of all, I start off with the background. I get rid of all that white canvas, and it's already done. I paint a scene, I guess, a scene. Now the trick is, what are you going to put in it? How are you going to do it? So that's where it takes a little bit of time. I take my pencil and I start I block off what I want in there. I have these pencils that are made out of chalk, white chalk. I paint right on, I draw right on my scene, and I sketch in my horse and my man or whatever I'm going to put in it, and I paint them out, and I silhouette them all out in dark. And then when it's dry, I just wipe off the white chalk and I begin painting. So that's the way I paint. So the painting part is easy for me. It's composing something that's going to keep me interested in painting. And art is you got to be 100% calm to paint. You can't have distractions. You can't have, for example, if you're having problems with your relationship, or you're having problems with your money, you're having problems, you just can't create. You're wasting time sitting there. Otherwise, I would be a really rich man by now if I could sit down on my canvas and paint every day. Okay.
You mentioned that you couldn't be a teacher. I'd just like to correct you on that. You are a wonderful teacher. Of all the trails in life, the trail of the true human being is by far the most important. And you have taught us that today, and your pictures have so much meaning. They have been so educational to anyone that reads into that, and your values and your ethics. I just want to thank you again. You are a wonderful teacher and a wonderful human being. Thank you.
Thank you very much.